Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Future Africa Forum from wherever in the world you are joining from. My name is Faith Abiodo. I'm super excited to have the privilege of welcoming you to the forum. We've got quite a few people joining from different parts of the world. If you could use the chat to share with us where in the world you're joining from and what you are most excited about to hearing today, that will be super helpful. Gabriel Bol Deng has already joined us, and we would be inviting him shortly to share with us today about his track record, his work in government, and some of the pieces of advice he's got to share with us about the future of government in governance in Africa. If you're able to the extent that you can, please keep your cameras on so that we have more engagement and so that we feel a communal spirit today. So if you can, please keep your cameras on, and we're looking forward to having a great session this afternoon. All right. I'd like to introduce Future Africa shortly, and I'll talk about the Future Africa Fellowship and the forum that we are having today. 5 years ago, we kicked off Future Africa with a team based in Johannesburg, South Africa, thinking about really what the future of the continent would look like and how to prepare the next generation of leaders who will take on roles in the public sector. The reason we kicked off Future Africa was to ensure that those who would step into government in the future become better prepared to address the various challenges in the public sector than those whom they have criticized. The vast majority of us grow up being very dissatisfied with governments and the roles that governments play in our lives. And as such, we aspire to seeing much better examples in the future. Where then do we go to prepare ourselves if we are the ones that we have been waiting for, as Barack Obama said many years ago? And so the Future Africa takes on a three-stage model. First of all, we want to create spaces for young people to explore as much as they can about the current realities in government. We want to ensure that we become better equipped to appreciate the societies in which we live. We understand how the public sector functions. We understand the policies, the personalities, the processes that govern the lives that we live. And as such, if we are to create change, we want to do that from a place of understanding, having decent awareness of the track record in governments so that we do a lot better in our time. So that understanding is the first phase of the Future Africa model. We call that Explore. From there, we move to the second stage of our model, which we call Innovate. We want to create spaces for people to rethink the processes of governments, to redesign policies at the local level, at the national level, at the international level, so that long in advance of the days when we step into governments and begin to implement change, we should have designed the kinds of approaches we want to see, whether that's in addressing challenges in education, in healthcare, in natural resource management, whatever area of the public sector attracts us and inspires us. We want to create space for people to innovate and rethink the challenges in those spaces and design the kinds of solutions that they want to see in their own time. That's the second stage of our model. The third stage of our model is a space in which we create space for people to engage, such that we are engaging with the public sector creatively, whether that is in lobbying some of our policymakers to implement some of the ideas that we've designed change solutions around, whether that is in running for office as individuals, whether that is in facilitating pathways for people to be able to run for office. Our goal is to ensure that we are making it possible for people who are prepared to create change in governments to be able to actually create and implement those changes. So those three stages for us: exploring the current issues as they are, innovating on those issues so that we can do better in the future, and thirdly, creating space to engage. That's what's led us to the Future Africa Fellowship, which is an 8-month program which we've designed to create space for young Africans between the ages of 21 to 30 who are currently imagining the roles that they would play in the public sector. We've created that space for them to spend enough time doing some research, to do some simulations, to do some debate, and have the space to explore their own leadership paths and how they would actually create change in the future. So our current class of fellows has been in the program for 5.5 months. We're at the end of the 5th month, actually, and now we're kicking off the 6th month. So this forum forms a key component of the learning journey within the fellowship. This forum is a quarterly series that creates space for us to invite current and former government leaders, as well as public sector researchers to share about their ideas, to share about their work, and most importantly, to share about the perspectives they have about how we can shape the future of the continent. So that's by way of introduction. Once again, my name is Faith, and I'm super excited to have many of you on the forum today, including some of our fellows. The format this afternoon, if it's afternoon for you, I know we have folks in the US for whom it is morning. The format this morning, afternoon, will be that I would moderate the session and Gabriel will speak, and we will create space for interaction right from the beginning. I would invite you to please use the chat respectfully, to post questions, to post comments, to post reflections, things that resonate with you from the conversation. Please use the chat very, very actively. And I would be collating some questions from there that I will be sharing with Gabriel this afternoon. So please use the chat right from the beginning. I see those of you who are joining and introducing yourselves. Thank you very much. For the rest of you, please use the chat as well to introduce yourselves. Let us know where in the world you currently are at the moment. If you are going to post anything on social media, you want to, retweet something if you can, or tweet something, or post on your channels, please use hashtag Future Africa Forum so that we can collate some of the ideas that are going out publicly as well. That is by way of introduction. Gabriel, I'd like to create space to welcome you there, this morning. Gabriel, good morning. Gabriel, if you're able to unmute, I want to be sure everyone can hear you. Great, there you are.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah.
Good morning, Gabriel. Lovely to have you this morning.
Very excited.
I know it's fairly early morning for you, so I'm glad that you're able to make the time. I'd like to actually share how I met you, Gabriel. It's been over 10 years now, but 10 years since we met for the first time. And I was greatly inspired by your story and the work that you've been doing with Hope for Ariang Foundation. I learned about the foundation in about 2011, I believe, 2011, 2012. And I was really, really fascinated by your journey coming from South Sudan, as you have narrated several times, having been caught in the war, in the middle of the crisis, and having to really escape from your village at the age of 10, having no idea what was going to happen in the future, and having no idea, about your family, etc. And you took that journey that took you through dangerous journeys, escaping the militiamen at the time and escaping wild animals on your path to safety. Eventually, you made it through to Ethiopia and then to Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And then you eventually got resettled in the US in 2001, where you had a chance to rebuild and to get your education. And eventually you returned to South Sudan many years after to try to find your family. And then you created Hope for Ariang Foundation, which has built a great, thriving school in the area and continues to do lots of development projects in that space. And then you eventually took a step back to return to South Sudan to work with the government. And today we have the chance to hear a little bit about that journey, but I know that you're going to give us a bit more of a historical context as to how you actually kicked off and really what the war was about in Sudan that led to the divisions that created both countries. So we're super excited to have you today, Gabriel. Really excited about your journey and all the perspectives you're going to share. So I'm going to create space for you to kick us off. I would come in every now and then to create space to bring in some questions that I know are beginning to emerge. And I'm going to invite everyone else to begin to use the chat to share some questions. So over to you, Gabriel. Today we've themed this session really about building a nation. We want to learn about the opportunities, the challenges, and very importantly, the role of professionals in government. So why don't you kick us off with a bit of background about how the nation of South Sudan came to be and what we've witnessed today.
First, I would like to thank you, Faith, and your team, especially the Future African Forum, for putting this together as a way to engage young people, give them the skills or the essential skills they need in order to be effective citizens in our own country, especially in Africa. Number two, I want to thank all these young fellows, young leaders, for taking the time and the interest in your in your professional journey to be effective and to make change in your own community. And as Pesa said, it is us, the leaders, especially the citizen, and we who are lucky to have an education that we have, to give back to our country, to educate other young people, to be effective participant in their government. So what I will do, I will not bore you with the historical conflict of between Sudan and South Sudan, but I will just be very brief. How did South Sudan came into being? And I hope through your research, and your own reading, and I saw a clip talking about the roads leading to independence. Like any other African country who have got independence, it was not easy, and it has not been easy for South Sudan to get the freedom they need. It took a lot of sacrifice, both human lives and materials. As we all know, Africa was colonized by British. Sudan was also a colony of British until 1956. And in the process of giving this large Africa country an independence, let me first step back. So what is the demographic of this country, of the former country called Sudan, including South Sudan? As we all know, Sudan is in Africa. It is a black country, but we were also lucky, like any other countries, through migrations and human interactions through generations. We have African Arabs who migrated to Sudan at that time. So that demographic made up of Africans and the Arabs form what was then the Sudan. And then collectively, we were all colonized by the British until 1956, and in the quest of getting independent, and as you know, by 1956, most of African countries, a lot of them were getting independent. Some have already gained their own independence. So there was what this is called infamous conference that was held in 1947 to explore the possibility of the British government to give independence to these two distinct part of Sudan. South Sudan being predominantly Black African, North Sudan being predominantly Arabs and African too. So in that conference, our people of South Sudan, the leaders at that time, voiced the concern that we, the people of Southern Sudan, must get our independence separately because we have cultural and religious difference between the North. And it did not happen. And January 1956, the independence was declared and we became one country. So immediately, one of the fundamental reasons why there was war and why South Sudan succeeded was the identity of the country. Is Sudan Islamic Arabic state, or is Sudan an African state? And again, nothing wrong with being Arab, nothing wrong being religions. But I think it is the made of a spear elite to divide Africans and South Sudanese on a tribal line. So 10 years ago, in this country that was called Sudan, I was a second-class citizen. So that means I don't have the same human dignity and the same equal rights with my fellow Sudanese Arabs. So for that reason, the people of Southern Sudan, through Sudan People Liberation Army and other army struggles before the SPLM waged the war, the vision of the SPLM was to create a Sudan based on equality, regardless of race and religion. So after 20 years, 21 years of fighting, and through interventions of international community, African countries, the SPLM, and the Congress Party at that time, they were brought on the table and negotiated the peace agreement from 2000 to 2005. In that piece of agreement, which is called Comprehensive Peace Agreement, there were three critical issues. The people of Southern Sudan were given the right to self-determination for 6 years to rule themselves autonomously. And then number two, the unity government in Khartoum and our brothers in the North, especially the politicians, were given a protocol of making unity attractive, that it was up to the political elite in Khartoum to convince the people of Southern Sudan that being together in Sudan is attractive. And obviously it did not go that way. January, after 6 years, people of Southern Sudan, January 2011, they voted, and obviously 98.9% voted for independence of South Sudan. That give birth to what is now called the Republic of South Sudan. I will stop there, but I will go to the main topics. What are the opportunities, or what were the opportunities? What are the challenges facing this young country in Africa? Let me come with the challenges first. Look, like any other country that emerged from a long civil war, and probably you might have read that the war between the North and the South Sudan was the longest running African civil war. Now, we separated from our brothers from the North, and with all expectation and hope, after long suffering of our people. And even when you go to South Sudan, we don't even say we are doing reconstruction, because nothing has been constructed in the first place. So we were beginning from zero, from nothing. So there were many challenges. Number one is the political challenges. We know the Sudan People Liberation Movement became now the governing party of South Sudan. The Sudan People Liberation Army became now the national government, the national army. And as we know, these were people, leaders, these were guerrilla leaders who may have not necessarily have the capacity to know how to run the country. So the first challenge is the human capacity in order to establish the country now and be able to translate, the motto of the country is justice, prosperity, and peaceful South Sudan. So the first challenge is the political challenges. After 1 year, from 2011 to 2013, at that time, the number one challenge was to establish a foundational institutions that are strong to manage the political, the social, cultural, and economic of this new country. And on that point, our leaders have failed miserably to govern our country. Number two, tragically, because of lack of political management of the crisis, our leaders had a power struggle in 2012, and in 2013, our country descended into, again, a civil war. And through many efforts, after 5 years, now we have what is now called a reconstituted national government, government of national unity. Then how did I come to participate and work in the government, and what were my personal challenges that I encountered? As we know, I came to US here, I got an education. I have my educational background. I'm a math teacher. I have a master's degree in math. And also, as a young person that have suffered and know what it's like to lack basic education, I was inspired and did the best I can to build a primary school in my village. Until 2014, especially during US African conference, I got in contact with ambassador in Washington, DC, and we were able to coordinate our delegation coming to the US to participate in African. So from there, I got connected with the people in the government, and through that connection and knowing my capacity, I was embedded in the office of the president to try to help build the capacity in the office of the president at that time. My first challenge was really lack of capacity individual capacity. So how did I survive and how did I maneuver in order to be an effective civil servant? First of all, I used my education to study. There are two critical documents, especially when you are a civil servant in South Sudan or in another country. There is what is called South Sudan Civil Service Act. When you look at, some of you can Google it and you can get it. It is an excellent document. Then other one is the South Sudan Public Employment Act. So what I did, I studied those things, and these were my Bible to educate myself first. And then now, because I was surrounded with those who don't have education, who were not so passionate, like lucky for me to get the education that I get. So what the first thing I did was to identify those with the potentials who were under me and above me to try to work together. First, I had to teach my secretary how to write a basic letter. Yeah, but so after that, I was frustrated and ending up being my own boss. So I had to drop things and have my secretary to do it. And I absolutely believe without active, trained public service, South Sudan will have a long way to bring the needed services to our citizens. Then let me also, what were the economic challenge? The economic challenge is that South Sudan, as you know, we got 80% of the oil from the north. So the oil wells are in South Sudan. But having this country now with huge, large resources and with lack of human capacity, it has been very difficult to translate our natural resources to benefit the citizen of now the new country called South Sudan. And Pez, can you jump in here?
Oh yeah, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Thanks for the perspective so far, and I'm sure that you're stimulating a few things already in the minds of people. I can see where this is going. I think personally, I'm fascinated by the idea of walking into a government situation knowing that perhaps you are the most educated around you, you're one of the most educated people around you, and you don't have the highest role in government. You're just one of the people who's working within the president's office to create change. But then your perspectives are definitely going to be different from what everyone else is bringing into office. So I know we're going to deep dive into that, and you were going to talk about those economic challenges that South Sudan has faced. When the 80% of the oil supply that accrued to South Sudan, was that part of the separation agreement? Was that part of this independence referendum that was implemented, or how did South Sudan get to own 80% of the oil distribution?
Yeah, it was because of the land, because most of the oil are
in the southern region.
Yeah, in the southern region. So by the land, or by the map, and going back to the British colonial map, that most of the resources are in the land of South Sudan. So it was just a natural blessing for us to have those resources.
That's fantastic. And so let's stay a little bit on the human capital concern, and then we'll dive deep into this economic concern. So human capital, by numbers, how many people would you say were working within the president's office and this ministry, basically, which was Ministry of Presidential Affairs as it came to be defined? What was the proportion? How many people were working in that space, and how many would you say had any kind of good education?
No, that is a very good question. Yeah, my experience with that, yeah, first of all, I was just a deputy for administration and finance, so I know those things. Yeah, the workforce made up of about 500 people, and I would argue that 90% of those people employed don't necessarily have the qualification they need to be effective in their work. And I would say that only 10% might have an education, but might not necessarily be in the right assignment to perform what is needed there. So and that is where they use the challenges is like presidency or the Ministry of Presidential Affairs is like an engine of a country. It is an engine, and when the engine don't have fuels, it cannot be effective. That the president and the presidency should be staffed with well qualified, well trained civil service to help advise the president to be effective in delivering and monitoring the program. That is, and even across the ministries. And as I know, most of the people in the civil service, these were the former soldiers. They fought very hard. They were brilliant soldiers, but they are not necessarily a good managers because their skills and their training was not to run the country. So it is really a total mess that need to be fixed. And let me go back. What I was saying, the challenges, I just talked about the opportunity.
Yeah.
What are the opportunities for this new nation? Number one, South Sudan is very lucky to have gotten independent in the 21st century. And South Sudan is 100% in a better position than other African countries that got independent in 60s and 80s and all of this. So the number one opportunity is that this country is a very young country. Between about 80% of the populations are young people, you see? And when you have these young people, it is an opportunity. There is energy there. There is a brain there to learn, to innovate, to think critically. So where the opportunity come here, it should have been for our leaders. And let me step back. And within these 80% of young people, South Sudan has most educated people, especially these young people around the world. And it should have been an opportunity for the government, the government now, to recruit these young people, to bring them into the workforce and create economic opportunities and employment, and especially business opportunity, because I am one person that believes government alone cannot develop our countries. It is the creative individual, it is innovation of individuals that can develop our country, South Sudan. The government was to formulate the policy and provide the space and a creative environment to ensure that young people can be free to be active, to be creative, and to reduce the resources we need, because there's nothing more important than our human capital. We have the resources, but if we don't have our own human capital, then the resources are sitting there like now. South Sudan should not be, our people should not suffer or continue to suffer the way we suffer, while trillions of golds and diamonds, I'm not even talking of the oil that is already known, are there sitting. So the opportunity for the new government now was to tap into these huge human potentials, to come back to their country and to create a conducive employment opportunities and investment opportunities, so that these young people whom our father has fought, because these are the President Kiir and his generation fought for us, so that we can have a better future. So I believe it is us, we young people, that should be given the opportunity to run, to participate in the government, while create a favorable investment opportunity for our young people to use their education to innovate and to make or help our leaders translate what is called now a prosperous, a peaceful South Sudan, whereby every citizen have liberty, economic prosperity. So that was it. So what was missed is that the government need to tap into these young people and have the capacity. So this is one opportunity. Another opportunity, the population again is relatively young. So with the resources that we have, the government should embark on educating the young people. And it is not just education having degrees. It should be an intended, a tailor educational program, like for example, electricians. What we need is what is now called a community college in the US, a community college, or we call it technical or vocational training in Africa. These are the programs that the government should have really dedicate some resources to make sure that our young people are trained to be carpenters, to be plumbers, to be electricians, in order to develop this country. But what happened? We don't have an Arab to blame. We don't have any other religion to blame. It is as our fathers, our leaders, that we, the citizens, should be blamed. Because now it is more of a individual power struggle. It is nothing to do with the tribe, Dinka or Nuer. Children of Nuer and children of Equatoria and children of Dinka are equally suffering. So this is just a political power struggle. And this is where, Pete, I share with you about my idea is that why African is so prone to civil war. It is because we, the young people, we don't have education, and those few, our fathers and brothers, who had an opportunity to be educated, to be elite, fail to really educate young people. And my idea to silence the guns in Africa is for all young people to be educated, because education begins with you. Because when you are educated, you can reason, you can think. And because that is what we became young, we became a puppet, we became a pawn, like just a politician coming when they quarrel on the table of the power sharing, they will run to their village and they say, this is Dinka, this is Nuer. No, this is not. It is just a political greed for power. So for South Sudan and for Africa, to silence the guns and bring needed human development, education is key. As our father and our visionary leader, Nelson Mandela, said, education is the most powerful weapon. So we, the young people, must arm ourselves with the barrels of a pen, with a pen. And with this pen, plus our mind, we can disarm the politician. We should not be following them. It has to tell them what to do for us. And I think this is what the Future Africa Forum is trying to do, to educate young people, give them the tools, innovative and creative tools, so that we can disarm our politicians and also use our education to be a creative, innovative, critical thinkers to solve our own problem. I was saying the other time that these our leaders, they would say, when they meet an artist, they will say, oh, African solution for African problem. African problem. But it is us, we the citizens. So I'm really excited about this. And I think, let me just bring in questions before I conclude my talk. What I want you, my recommendation. Yeah.
Gabriel, this is fantastic. Yeah, this is fantastic. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. I'd actually like to invite the guys who posted the questions to ask their questions. Perhaps I'd like to go with you, Olemo, Brian Olemo. You were asking a question here really about whether the president was responsive, to Gabriel's, advice. Olemo, do you want to articulate your question verbally? Go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Faith. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. I love the presentation. Learned a lot. My question really is around the role of presidential advisors, right, in different countries. And I get the experience from my own country, Uganda, where many people claim that instead of the presidential advisors advising the president, it happens the other way around, right? It's the president who advises his advisors. So I just wanted to ask, during your stay in the ministry and during your time in the office of the presidency, how receptive would you say the president was to technical advice from the few who are educated, from the few who you say were qualified to actually offer such advice? And didn't politics sometimes get in the way of the president really taking decisions that are in line with sort of sound economic thinking, right, rather than just fulfilling their own selfish interest?
Okay, no, that is a very good question. Let me just, this is what, let me put it this way. When I went with this mindset and knowing how institution worked, in the presidency, we have the minister. The minister should be the policy, should be in charge of policy creation and policy coordination. And then we have somebody called chief administrator. Chief administrator should deal with personnel, recruitment, retention, make sure that the civil service are competent, creative. And then now, in the office, then now you have the executive office where I am in. So in the executive office, we have executive director. Executive director is an office manager of the president. Is the third ranking civil servant in that. Then I come the fourth ranking one, assistant office manager in there. So when I came, what I thought by the policy, as a civil servant, our boss now is a minister. So what in the beginning, I try to channel all my energy and advice through the minister. And the first thing that surprised me was that after I came, after 1 month, I told the Faith about this. I came to the office, I observed. So the minister, I would see him go in and brief the president, and I kept quiet. So one time I asked his office manager that where does the minister get his staff to go and brief the president? His office manager laughed at me and he said, no, the minister does not listen. But part of it is the 3 ministers I have worked with, it is a lack of capacity to themselves. Because, so what I'm ending up doing, if there is anything, and then my boss, my former boss was not the current one, cannot even read a paragraph. This was a former general. But it was him in me. So what I'm ending up, the good thing with the president, our president really is very humble enough. So after all this frustration, I ending up, when I see any other critical issues, I will go to the president and tell him, this is what I think, and this is what you should do. For I would say 90% of the thing I told the president, he have done them. But I think it is the institutions that has failed the president. Because our job as a civil servant around the president is to ensure that the president is operating in an environment that is creative, innovative, so that he have the ideas. Because the purpose of the president is to make the decision. But when you don't have the right people around you, then you are not getting the best advice. So I would say, yes, President, listen to me, to some of my advice. But alone, being a junior, it was seem this is a promotion of myself. But my goal was to try to help the president. So I really struggled, because those people, when they see me and when I argue with them, I say, this is what need to be done. Even the policy, what is a simple policy that define a policy and what it is, what is the implementation. It is very hard for some of the for some of the people. So that was a very good question. The president has a good personality, and as is widely known in the world, that most of the Southern Sudanese believe it is the people surrounding the president that are misleading him, and that is where our country finding itself in this. So thank you so much. That was a good question.
Fantastic, Gabriel. Thanks for that. Tetekel, I'm not sure if you're able to articulate yourself, but if you want to, your question here really was about, the pathways for young people into government. And Gabriel, you were talking earlier about the fact that the government needs to, tap the energy of young people and bring them into government and all that. I think Tetekel has got a question here about some of those pathways. Tetekel, are you there? Can you articulate your question?
Yes, I'll try to do it. Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. My question really was just jumping out the fact that how you got into government was kind of networking, like you were able to go to, I think you said New York or the UN and meet with some people, and that's how you got into. But I'm thinking of the more formal pathways for young South Sudanese youth to really get into government, and how you talked to us about human capacities. How is that being developed, especially for governmental roles within South Sudan?
Okay. Yeah, I think there are two ways I tell people to get there are two ways I see to get involved in the government. Number one is through your activity, through your participation and engagement at your community level. That is number one, because when your people see you, that you stand with them, you are engaging with them, they will be the one. Like, for example, we have 10 states. So through your active participation in the community, your community would be one way of you to come to the government. Another way is through Ministry of Public Service, especially in South Sudan. Recently, last week I saw something very nice, a press release from the Ministry of Labor and Public Service, that it was an act passed by the cabinet to advertise, begin for the first time, to begin for the government to advertise the open for the positions. So using your skills through Ministry of Public Service, I think you can get into the government. But the most important is when you are helping your community, when your action, when you are there in your community, your people themselves will be the one that can recommend you to be to participate in the government. Any other question?
I wanted to build on Tezekela's question there, Gabriel. So when people join government, are there formal training processes for them to develop their skills? Because you can't be the only one doing it, Gabriel.
No, yeah, I think that thing, that one I want to come up. So basically, as I said, the Civil Service Act is an excellent document. And I would say, since day one, I was appointed by the president. I never done any training other just than my own personal readings and effort, because I'm one of the person that I really want to know. I'm always inquisitive, but most of the institution, there is no formal training. You are just appointed there, that is it. But I think the current Minister of Public Service, I saw some nice press release the other day to try to, like, even for example, here in the US, this was my impression when I came to US in 2001. I got a job, and then after 3 months in my job, I did orientation, and the orientation, I was given a book. There was a book like this, what is called Employees Manual. So somehow after 3 months, a job came up. So I went to my manager and I told him I'm interested in this job. He said, Gabriel, you go and read your employees manual. So what I did, I came back and I read my employees manual. And what was there was that in order to be promoted, in order to apply for a job within the company, you must at least spend 2 years in the same job in order to get the permission. And within this employees manual, employees handbook, let me call it that way, this is where everything, dress code, your rights, your privileges, way to disciplinary action, all of this. They are in excellent book in South Sudan, in the Civil Service Act. But again, they are not implemented. They are sitting there, just sitting there. Part of it is our boss don't have the capacity to read and comprehend and understand, and try to train people. Number two, when I went to college, especially I was taking math. I talked to my professor, and the first thing he advised me was, in my orientation in college in America, was syllabus. You read your syllabus, and when I read the syllabus, I can easily tell what kind of grade will I get in that in that course, because it is I will map it out. So again, it goes back institutional instrument that should be there. They are not, the literature is there, but the capacity of the managers and the leaders and directors to train people, it is not there. And I hope the new minister can do that.
Thanks for that. Olive, we've got Olive. Olive is Ethiopian. Do you got any questions for us? I see your hand is up.
Thank you for giving me this chance, Mr. Faith. Mr. Gabriel, thank you for sharing your experience. It is very insightful to hear from you about your experience. As Mr. Faith mentioned, I'm Ethiopian, and I think by now it's a public knowledge that Ethiopia is going through so much when it comes to division and war and conflict, and your experience brings so much to the youth. So I appreciate you for that. My question is, yeah, Mr. Faith, when he introduced you, he mentioned about the journey you took to get to where you are, going to refugee camps, and I mean, going through so much. How did you do all that? Like, what kept you going? Your perseverance is something, like, for us, I'm Ethiopian, residing in the US for school, and just getting to hear about the things that are happening back home in my country through social media creates so much emotional challenge for me. So how did you do it? How did you persevere?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It goes back to my personal value and family education, though it was not, when I was young, my parents, especially my dad, used to tell me that they used to talk figuratively to me, that they said, if I have positive attitude and hope, I could move Mountain Kilimanjaro. Did you believe that? In the beginning, when I was young, I took them for, so the value of hope and a positive attitude, especially my mom, always talk about, instill in me the value of having positive attitude in any situation. So in this case, I did not say that. So what happened when the war broke out in 1983, this was the second civil war, and my heart goes out to children in Tigrinya region in the war in South Sudan, because in Ethiopia, when the war break out, usually it is the women, which is the kids, and properties that are destroyed. So in this case, in 80s, when the war in the south happened, it is the government in Khartoum that sent the militia into southern Sudan to burn down villages and kill young people. What kept me along the way, especially, I was in the Dima, the southern part or western part of Ethiopia. It took us 4 months to walk, and along the way, I almost gave up because there was so many anger, humiliated. But I was able to have a dream. Especially, there was a small desert between Sudan and Ethiopia. And along the way, a lot of young people died of starvation and thirst. And along the way, I almost died, but I was able to remember my parents came in the dream, and they told me that, Gabriel, I lose hope. I was losing hope, that remember the mountain that we told you, it was not the mountain Kilimanjaro, it were the challenges in life. and they urged me in that dream to never give up hope and to have a positive attitude. At that time, I was as if it was a dream. I was talking to my parents. They're telling me I'm very, very disillusional. I was hopeless. So that really dream, since I was young, 19, I remember, since 1987, that has really been in my mind, that every time I have a problem, and even my parents would say, any problem in your lives is divided into the 90 and the 10%. And the 10%, these are the things that we cannot control. And in this case, I did not control the war. So did any other children in South Sudan, or even now, the kids in northern region, in Tigrinya, did not really control the war. It was just a political making. It is the politicians that make that. So that is what I call the 10%. But I would use the 90% of my attitude, the resilience, creative thinking, and hope to help me overcome this 10%. And that has really seen that day. I recall the importance of my parent education. It continued to give me hope. Even up to today, I'm a human being. Sometimes I have problems, and especially when seeing the situation in South Sudan. Every time I go and see people suffering, and when I see the huge potential that our country have, both human resources and natural and natural resources, that if we can just use our human capital to exploit and use these resources, we will make everybody in South Sudan very happy. Likewise in Africa, Africa is they say a country of is a continent of 900 million, and these 900 million are still 90% of these 900 million is still live in less than $1 a day. When down the earth, beneath our own continent, Africa is so much endowed with so much public, with so much resources. But just we allowed few elite and our leaders to divide and cause the misery and suffering in our people. So for me, hope is very important. That's why I have my foundation, Hope for Ariang, because hope is such something important and resilient. And my advice is always, you may not run away from war, but I think the values are values. And that is why the family education is very important. That our African values are very important. Africa are known for resilience, are known to be brave. So this is really what keeps me going, past my attitude and hope to continue to overcome what I'm going through.
Thanks so much, Gabriel. And thanks, Oli, for the brilliant question. Kuma Gangen is actually a South Sudanese refugee currently in Uganda. I'm not sure if you're able to articulate yourself. Kuma, do you want to ask your question? Can you unmute your microphone? Let's see if we can get you. You need to unmute yourself as well. I see you've. Yes, Kuma, go ahead. I'm not getting the audio. Kuma, your connection is breaking. Kuma, would you maybe type your question instead, or maybe let's keep your camera off and see if maybe that will allow your connection to come out better. Let's see if we can hear you better now. A little bit better.
Yes. My question is straight away to my elder brother, Mr. Gabriel. As the South Sudanese, I'm very sorry of what happened to South Sudan. Yes, after 1 year, we are independent and we failed to control. Now, the issue is, I do hear rumors say this country will get better when these people will get from the war and come down more. Just wonder how can to get more better. But in which format this will come up, and yet
Kumar, can I ask that you please type the question instead? Your connection is really not clear. Kumar, I'm sorry to have to cut you off there. We're not picking. I had a little bit of what you were talking about, how to rebuild the country in some way, but I didn't pick up everything. I'm not sure Gabriel did either.
I think it would be better. He can type it up and
you can type it. Yeah. Kumar, please type your question if you can, and then I'll make sure that Gabriel gets a chance to respond to it. I'm so sorry to have to cut you off. And I know it's a very important question, but I want you to please type it. Anita, you did have a question earlier, and I'm wondering if you're able to articulate. You are in Kenya, and Anita here is talking really about this disparity between this old generation of politicians and the younger generation that's a little bit more energetic. Anita, do you want to articulate your question if you're there? Anita, go ahead.
Thank you, Faith, and thank you, Mr. Gabriel. It's just like you said, there's a bit of it's quite a massive, and that older generation that is a bit conservatist in its ideals, and it's a political elite. And yes, you could have the education. I do agree. You can have the credentials, but when it comes to the reality, when you're actually trying to get into it, they make it impossible. You could have the best intentions, but so now I'm really curious, how would you suggest, how would you cope with that gap? And actually a good suggestion for like active youth participation, because that is what we have in Kenya. I don't know how it is in South Sudan.
No, I think that is a very good question. Myself, and I thank Kenyan. I got my education in Kenya. I did my KCP and I was about to sit for KCSE secondary education, but I came here. So Kenya is my second home, because my Ethiopia was my first. After I left South Sudan, Ethiopia became my first, second home, and then Kenya and all of it. And I think the people of South Sudan and my brother and even in Uganda now, there were also young people who were in Uganda, and without the support of Kenyan and Uganda, I think these a group of young people that I was talking that were fortunate to have this kind of education. Let me go back to your question. Yep, it is tough, I know. Kenya, but so far, is far well ahead of educated young people. But what we need programs like Future African. You may know, I would say 80% of youth in Kenya are educated. Kenya is well advanced. But now it is the action, how we first work together as a youth, because first of all, we have the numbers. And I know Kenyan is very, we have the numbers and we have the education. But it is as the young people, the youth, allow these few politicians, or I would say in Kenya they call dynasty, political dynasty, to continue to divide and make us run after them when they should run to us. So what we need, it is a tell us program like Future African for young people with education first to understand what is a government. A government is a system agreed by the people through the constitution how they should govern themselves. And within that constitution, there are measures and instruments by which citizens can hold their dynasty, or they can hold their politician accountable to avoid being being a dynasty. So what I'm saying is that you may have excellent education, but if that education is not put to use, it is useless. So my idea is that I am advising and urging young Kenyan to really come up with such innovative groups innovative programs to train young people to understand what is a government, to understand the constitutions, and then using the constitutions and using education, we can prevent dynasty so that every child in Kenya have access to the resources, have access to power, and become the president. So become the president of the country. So it is us, young people, again, working together, coming up with a creative initiative like this to train youth, advocacy, civil engagement are the key for young people, and for especially in Africa, to hold their politicians accountable, because then they will. So that is really my advice, that it is a work, putting our education to youth, to utilize and work together as a collective voice to demand what we want from, and how to demand what we want and how we can be governed. So Anita, that was really a very, very, very good question.
Thanks so much, Gabriel. We've got to keep doing what we're doing. And we've got one more question from Jordan. Jordan is also in Ethiopia. And Jordan is super, super passionate about, government accountability and transparency. And Jordan, I'm wondering, do you want to articulate your question? It's a brilliant question.
Yes, sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for that astonishing life story, Mr. Gabriel, and everyone who has organized this. So my first question is that, I guess you've lightly touched upon right now, is how can, one make South Sudan's government more accountable? As per the Transparency Index in 2019 or 18 that came out, it showed that South Sudan is one of the least or one of the most corrupt nation in Africa. And second is that, is it easy for young, South Sudanese youth to participate in any sphere of political or government action or something, like even a simple internship as well? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that is a very good question. As I said in the beginning, that South Sudan, like any other African country that had emerged from civil war or independent from the colonial British, is in transition politically, economically, and culturally. And this is where our political leaders fail us in South Sudan. Shortly after independence, what would have been important was now to build, first of all, to build the institutions, do the people-driven constitutions. And my understanding was that in the middle of trying to build the institution, like in 2000 and we got independent 2011, 2013, and in 2015 there should have been a constitution, and then the head count, so that we know how many people in South Sudan. Currently, the former Sudan, or when we were in Sudan, South Sudan has been only a region under 8 million. So I'm getting lost here. So there are ways that young people can hold the government accountable. Our institutions are currently very weak. And as I said in the beginning, that it is the human capital that can help influence the politicians and bring back the accountability and transparency that we need. So, yeah, of course, there are institutions you can do internship in South Sudan. And one of the things, when I was in the office, I was able to engage two South Sudanese who were educating in Uganda, and they came for internship. And I find them, they were very, very, very effective. One was doing accounting, and one was doing a business management. So knowing the importance of human capacity, I was able to absorb them in, and they work under me for 6 months. And after that, they were very effective. So there are opportunities still there. But the issue of accountability, that is where it is still very hard, because again, active citizenship, active citizen engagement to hold their government accountable. And as I said, the government, our leader, needs to take this opportunity for this young, relatively young population with huge young people, with huge human capital, to entrench in the systems so that we can have accountable and transparency in the system. But I know it will not be handed. The people of Southern Sudan, of South Sudan, Southern Sudan was a former region, where the people of South Sudan cannot, or the people of Africa cannot get transparency and accountability on a golden plate. It is something that the citizen has to demand. And that is why a program like this, youth awareness, youth program to educate youth, to understand how the government functions, and going back to their community and be active participant in order to hold our leaders and our government accountable. It is not really easy, but again, for me, I believe it go back to education and how we young people can use their education to influence their communities and their government to be effective in how both human resources and human capitals are administered and make use for a greater good of a common citizen.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I think I want to take just one more question, and then I want you to give your recommendations, which you were about to give earlier. So Kuma has eventually been able to type his question here. The first one is one you've been speaking about already, right? You know, just for young people like Kuma, who again currently is in Uganda as a refugee from South Sudan, and is wondering, you know, how really will young people get a chance to rule in power? And I buy into what you're saying. We need to work with folks like Kuma to eventually translate this same work on the ground to build those small movements. And essentially what we are trying to do at Future Africa is to create country level communities, right? Next week, we're kicking off our next program, the Future Africa Ambassadors, which will begin to create local level programs in each country to mobilize people to, you know, to think a lot more about how the government works and how they will play a role. But Kuma's second question here is particularly important. He's wondering, Gabriel, how best can the government make disarmament possible in the entirety of South Sudan? I mean, people are still dying every single day in the country. Disarmament has been a promise for a long time. What needs to happen next for disarmament to be, you know, a reality in South Sudan?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. I know the government has attempted or has tried several times to do communal disarmament, but it must be in device, taking a gun away from the youth without necessary a buy-in or something to give them. And my policy recommendation has been to the president and to whoever I talk to that disarmament only by force is nearly impossible. The community is not buying in, because now having a gun, it became a way of survival. When you have a gun, you can go and rob somebody's cattle. So, but what the government come in here, disarmament should be accompanied with a specific tailored development. Like I know, especially the Nuer and the Dinka, who are still majority of the young people, they have guns, they still have keep cattle. So they hold on to guns for two ways: to protect their cattle, and number two, has a way to eat, to rob somebody's cattle in order to make a living. So where the government, the policy recommendations, number one is that when the government has tried several times, in 2005 disarmament, but it doesn't work because there is no buy-in. There is no buy-in. There is no trade-off from the government. So what the government needs to do is to build secondary schools, do vocational training, center. When you bring a gun out in the hand of the youth, give them the traits. Say, give me your guns. These are the skills you need. You don't need a gun to survive, but you will be trained in order to have the skill to be a carpenter, even to be a good cattle keepers, instead of having a gun. So that has been my policy recommendation, and that's where the government failed. That when we went to this Hamani community, the government need to map out a trade-off. I read something, and it was now Brazil is an emerging middle-income country or whatever. I read the former president in the 90s or in the 80s incentivized education. He was able to come up with the policy that if every child that comes to schools, he will give $2 or $3 to the family. So education was incentivized. So what happened? Everybody taking their kids to schools. And now Brazil is coming, so it should be the same thing. If our government need to take the gun out in the hand of young people in the communities, there must be a specific community development in that specific area so that young people are engaged in getting knowledge, which they will use to make a living and contribute to the well-being of their families and to the goodness and the development of the countries. And do in disarmament without trade-off and without development is not going to work. And that has been for the last 10 years. Now that our government, again, coming up with a targeted development program. Like when I had been talking to some of my friends from Upper Nile, from Dinka area, all of these, like government need to create like a Marshall Plan for every community. There has to be a targeted development in that. And I believe that with the large resources we have, and with accountable and responsible political leaders and government, South Sudan can easily be developed. The resources are enough to provide for the citizen of South Sudan. So that is my number one regarding disarmament. And that's why it is not work. Taking gun away without telling the youth, training them, giving them the critical skills they need to participate and to make a living, that disarmament is not going to work. What was the second part?
No, Gabriel, we've already covered that second part, really, which was a bit about what young people need to do. We're going to bring that in the closing because, someone else has really asked this question. What if in the next, few years, if the government also doesn't listen, what are the alternatives for youth? But I want to come to that in closing. Mm-hmm. You had some recommendations earlier for moving forward, and I want to get your recommendations and just your words of advice for those who are now thinking about what their role will be in the public sector. They've joined this fellowship, they want to design their own journeys. I want to get both your recommendations for moving forward and your words of advice for everyone on the call.
Okay, yeah, mine was just a question and a challenge, follow up with the comment. Was that the question? My question is especially to these young African leaders. My question is that how will our generation, with all the acquired education and in the age of technological development, can help shape the future of Africa we want? Again, African Agenda of 2063. So how can we influence our political leadership to make sure that they are ruling the way we want, we, the citizen of Africa, or a global citizen? My number one, again, is a summary of my talk. Young people need to first acquire meaningful education. That is a way step to be knowledgeable about yourself. Know your responsibility as a citizen and as a human being. Use your education to improve yourself, and now use your education to involve in the community, to transform and bring a meaningful change in the community, meaning that we are agent and a voice of our people. So it's a useful use of education. Number two is creativity. Again, I hope you are aware of what is called skill for 21st century. And there are 3 C: collaboration, creative, and and critical thinking. So using our critical thinking to be innovative. Again, our government cannot solve our problems. All Africans or South Sudanese cannot be employed in the government. So we have to find other creative ways to be an agent of change and development in our own countries. And I encourage ourselves, especially the young people, to work together, hand by hand. Again, going back to Nita in Kenya, that if young people with their education coming up together, working together, we can do great things. We can influence our politicians. We can shape the future of the country we want, in how we can be governed and how we can contribute individually. I'm a person that believes nobody is an island, that English say, nobody is an island, that we have to join hands and join our mind to work together to transform our communities for a common good of our citizens in South Sudan and across across Africa. We are in a better age, given the technological platform and all this good human development that we have done, that we can now use them to bring the necessary change we need in both our community, in both our countries. So I think that would conclude my remarks. And again, I'm very happy and humble and privileged to have been given the opportunity to share my life stories and experience in working in the government. Let's go and work hard to create the community we want, so that because our collective community success will lead to a collective country success and a collective Africa that we want. Africa that will be accountable, Africa that will care for the citizens, Africa that will make it conducive for human living. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a million, Gabriel. This has been fantastic. We've had a chance to, again, like you've mentioned technology a few times, technology has allowed us to create, this conversation with Africans who are, in Qatar, in Canada, in the US, in the UK, in Uganda, in Nigeria, all over the continent, really. This has been, just a fantastic conversation so far. I'm super inspired. I've taken lots of notes about things that we have to do. Luckily, we've had a chance to record this. We're going to listen to it over and over again as we build our inspiration going forward. I want us to close on a forward-thinking note. Your charge, your encouragement is really, really powerful. Elizabeth, who's just asked this final question, she's Nigerian, she's studying currently in Qatar. And I think it's very important, the question that she's bringing in, because she's in the energy sector. Right, she's studying, how to move forward from oil and gas and how to still maximize African development with this trajectory that we've got so far. And South Sudan sitting on this immense oil potential at the moment. And how do we ensure that going into the future, South Sudan has a much better development path than what other African countries have had, not been able to pull ourselves up economically, in spite of the immense natural resources in Africa. We haven't been able to, wean ourselves off to really gain full economic independence from the rest of the West. What will it take for South Sudan to be different? Elizabeth, do you want to just voice over a little bit to add something more to what I've just explained about your question, so that Gabriel can give us this forward-thinking approach?
Yes, thank you so much, Faith. Thank you so much, Gabriel, for sharing your story, for being with us today. I really appreciate this. Yes, so my question is actually twofold. I am wondering about about education. So when you say quality education, I know for a fact that my country's universities are like a few years behind. So does quality education, do you mean academics alone as per quality education needed for government? And then also I'm curious, what if we're not able to get good government to listen within the next few years? Is there an alternative pathway, for example, for the youth to go on that might really be of help? So these two questions I would like you to lend your thoughts to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, number one is how the issue of the effective use of resources to win the South Sudan, or for South Sudan not to be in the same traps like the other Africans have had. And I said in the opportunity before, like South Sudan and South Sudanese leaders should start where the world is. In 50s and 60s, there was no technological advancement. And again, having a tailored educational program. Like now, most of our engineers there in the oil field are Chinese. So where are our Africans? If the government targeted a program, let's say the government of South Sudan will take, let's say, 2,000 young people to Malaysia, to China, to any other good petroleum in engineering universities, so that they learn specific skills and bring them back in a couple of years, 2, 3 years, or 4 years, and now put them into to be the one driving the oil, to be the engineers, to be the one that is one thing. That's what I mean by quality education, a tailored education program for the citizen, so that they can be in driving seat for exploiting their resources for the common good of their own country, rather than bringing the expatriate. There's nothing wrong, but I think having that capacity we don't have now. We have the resources, but we don't have the human capital to exploit these resources. And that's what I mean by quality education. It's not just an education. It is a tailored educational program for a specific development, like oil sector. And other biggest resource in Africa is not really oil, it is the land. And South Sudan is so blessed with abundant natural fertile land. So, and what the oil is, as we know it is, oil can finish, but our land will always be there. So it is an opportunity for the government to use the oil proceeds to be creative and create like technology, other platform, use these resources to diversify the economy, so that we cannot depend on oil. And that is what other African countries has been done, that we have rely on the oil when we should have using this oil in the age of the technological advancement to be creative, to be creative, bring creativity and innovations in communication, in tech sector, so that young people are the creators of those platforms, and they themselves become those companies, and those companies became an agent for change, an agent for employment for the citizen. So that is what I mean, not just about quality education.
Wow, thank you so much. This has been a lot, and Gabriel, we're really grateful for the time and the expertise. This is our hope here, that by creating this bridge between the generations of individuals who have had the chance to go into government and to come out from the government, and people who are thinking about going into government over time, that we go in much better prepared than those who have gone in the past. And we have to continue to facilitate this transfer of knowledge from one generation to the other. And Gabriel, in many ways, you are a pioneer, you are a leader for folks like us who are, wondering, how can we play a role, and how do we get involved, and where do we start from? First, we have to prepare ourselves, get this quality education, right? Ensure that we are educating ourselves about the realities of government, and that we are designing before our time some of those approaches that we were taking to making sure that we are prepared to do better than those people whom we have criticized. And I'm super, super grateful for your time. And I'm very, very, very encouraged by your words of endorsement and encouragement for everyone else on this call to go ahead and make the most of the opportunities they've had. So thank you very much. I'd also just like to thank everyone else who's participated today from all over the world, really. It shows your enthusiasm, your determination. Some of you have woken up very early in the West. Some of you are, towards the end of the day, right here on the continent, people in Europe, in America, and right here in Africa. I'm just really, really grateful for everything that you have brought in today. Gabriel, we'll be in touch again, and we'll invite you again as time goes to share even more words of advice.
Thank you.
All right, for everyone else that has participated, thank you very much. I look forward to keeping in touch and sharing many, many more sessions together. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you again in the future.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah,
Thanks,
you.
Gabriel.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.